welcome to Women of Resistance. Now, the world will never forget the genocide that was perpetrated on the Palestinian people. And though there is an agreed ceasefire, for now at least, the suffering of Palestinians is far from over while they remain under the Zionist occupation. Now meet Noura AlQasasiya, who tells us about both the trauma endured during the war on her and her people in Gaza, and also of the hope for a better future.
Artist and aspiring fashion student Noura has the history of Palestine infused in her very DNA. This Gazan-born 25-year-old has grown up beneath the shadow of oppression and a sense of being part of a long-fought struggle.
الاحتلال وأفعاله ومفهومه أشياء تعلمناها من أهلنا، زي بلدتنا الأصلية زرنوقة قدر رملة تهجروا منها أجدادنا. جدي والد أمي توفى بحادث مع جب الاحتلال. عمي كان أسير عند الاحتلال. تيتا دلال جدة أمي الله يطول بعمرها عاشت النكبة عام 1948. قصص ماما وبابا عن أيام الانتفاضة، أشياء عرفناها بأول عمرنا بس فهمناها أكثر وتعلمناها بالمدرسة.
Noura speaks of broken dreams, of an occupation crushing her humble ambitions.
الحياة تحت الاحتلال طبعاً صعبة من كل النواحي، خصوصاً بغزة لأننا محاصرين من 2006 بزنزانة. السفر كان بصعوبة كبيرة ونادر ما كان حد يسافر. يعني أنا عمري 25 سنة ولحد الآن ما طلعت من غزة بحياتي. حياتي كشابة بغزة بأحلام وطموحات كبيرة، كأني يعني عصفور بقفص، ما بقدر أخذ حريتي بأي شيء. دراستي مثلا كان حلمي إني أدرس تصميم الأزياء في مكان برا غزة، بسبب إنه التخصص بدائي جدا في غزة وما في كوادر تعليمية تعطي بصورة أكبر، ولكن ما قدرت بسبب المعبر. ولو بدي أحكي أمثلة تانية أكيد مش رح أخلص.
They say diamonds are created under extreme pressure, and Gazans prove that every day with their resilience and creativity.
أكيد التحديات والصعوبات كانت موضوعنا بأغلب قعداتنا بالبيت، بالمدرسة، بالشارع، مع أصحابنا، بس كل مكان. بس أنا برأيي إنه هي كانت الصعوبات هاي كانت سبب في إبداع كتير من الشباب ودافع لأنهم يتخطوا كل الحواجز بمواهبهم وقدراتهم.
The inventive nature of Gazans began to bear fruit, but the occupation's genocide soon put pay to that notion.
آخر 3 سنوات قبل 7 أكتوبر غزة كانت في قمة ازدهارها، من علم، من مشاريع، نجاحات، من جمال، من عمارة. كانت حياة كاملة من جميع الجهات، أفضل أكل وشرب وعلم وتعليم، أماكن ترفيهية، مطاعم، كل شيء كان موجود. حياتنا انقلبت تماماً بعد 7 أكتوبر. صرنا بغربة، صار لنا أكثر من سنة مشردين نازحين بدون أدنى مقومات الحياة العادية، لا بيت، لا أكل، لا مياه نظيفة، وهذا إذا وجدت أصلاً. أواعينا من سنة ما تغيرت، انهارت وتمزعت. فترة كبيرة ما في غاز وكنا نطبخ على النار، وهاي معاناة لحالها. نزحنا أكثر من 5 مرات لدير البلح، لرفح، لخان يونس، وعشنا بخيمة لمدة أكثر من شهر. وبعدها هنا على الدير مرة تانية. صار لنا أكثر من سنة غريبين وتايهين، يعني بنعيش حياة ما بتشبهنا. صرنا نفسياً وجسدياً مستنزفين.
One of the hardest things Noura and millions of Palestinians like her would have had to wrestle with is not just the inhumanity of the perpetrators of the genocide, but the silence of the onlookers.
صراحة بكره العالم ما بعرف كيف ممكن إنسان طبيعي إنه يشوف الأشياء اللي إحنا بنعيشها وبنتعرض لها من قتل، أسر، تعذيب، جوع، تشريد، وإنه يوقف ساكن بدون ما يعمل أي إشي، لأنه يعمل أي حركة بسيطة ممكن توقف المجازر اللي بتصير. اللي بخوفني أكتر من الموت بأبشع الطرق إني أنا أعيش بهذا العالم اللي كان شريك بالإبادة، وكيف رح أقدر أتعامل مع اللا إنسانيين اللي كانوا شركاء بكل الجرائم اللي بتصير بصمتهم.
The trauma of what Noura and her loved ones have endured for over a year cuts deep.
العيش تحت الإبادة والتطهير العرقي اللي بيصير بكل تفاصيلها هي صدمة ما بظن إنه رح نقدر ننشفى منها يعني لطول الحياة. صرنا بنشوف العالم بطريقة بشعة، يعني أول أسبوع بالحرب كان قصف عنيف ما بيوقف بدون نوم، خوف متواصل، بنستنى بس اللحظة اللي أنت ممكن تكون الرقم الثاني بعداد الموتى، لليوم اللي أجبرنا فيه الاحتلال على النزوح للجنوب ونترك بيتنا، أغراضنا، حياتنا، ذكرياتنا، شغلنا، كلها أشياء ما ضل منها إلا الصور.
The memories of what Noura has endured still swim close to the surface, alongside hopes of a better tomorrow.
السيارة اللي انقصفت قدامنا بالممر الآمن زي ما ادعى الاحتلال، الأشلاء اللي شفناها، والفرق كان لحظات كان ممكن نكون إحنا، صور الأطفال والنساء والرجال اللي قتلهم الاحتلال وعذبهم بأبشع الطرق وأكثرها إجراماً. العيشة بالخيمة دمرتنا نفسياً فوق ما تتصوروا. فكرة إنه روحنا كانت مرهونة ب10,000 دولار كان لازم تدفعهم ثمن خلاصك. مستقبل صراحة بطلت شايفة لهاي الكلمة معنى، مستقبلنا مجهول، ما بقدر أضمن إني أنا رح أضل عايشة بعد دقيقة. الاحتلال ما وقف قتل، تدمير أكثر من سنة على غزة و75 سنة في كل فلسطين. أمنيتي الأولى إنه يوقف شلال الدم والمجازر اللي بتصير، أرجع على بيتنا أو بقايا بيتنا في الشمال، وأكيد أشوف اليوم اللي راح تكون فيه فلسطين حرة إن شاء الله.
Noura has a pointed message to those who still listen and want to amplify the voice of the voiceless.
رسالتي للعالم إذا كان بيسمع، ضلوا احكوا عنا وانشروا قصصنا، لأنه الاحتلال بيحاول يمحي أي صوت فلسطيني، أي موهبة فلسطينية. الاحتلال بيكره أي إشي فلسطيني.
Despite the challenges, Noura has fallen back on her talent and inspiration to help her speak truth to power.
أحس مسؤوليتي كفنانة إني أوثق الإبادة اللي بنتعرض لها كفلسطينيين، أوثق الألم، المعاناة، كل شيء بيمر فيه شعبي، وأكيد مشاعر الخاصة اللي هو الرسم، طريقتي إني أعبر عن مشاعر الخاصة. الرسم هو طريقتي في مقاومة الاحتلال وإثبات وجودنا. ما زلت متمسكة بالرسم لحد الآن بأدواتي البسيطة اللي قدرت أحملها معي خلال نزوحي، اللي هو دفتري وشوية ألوان وجهاز الآيباد.
The litany of destruction and upheaval Noura and her family have endured since the latest round of Israeli aggression reads like a dystopian nightmare. But this is now the reality of Palestinians who have managed so far to overcome the odds and stay alive.
معاناتنا بغزة بالوقت الحالي ما بتنتهي. أكتر من سنة ما في كهرباء، ما في ضوء، ما بنقدر نشحن جوالاتنا أو حتى بطارية علشان نضوي فيها. سبب هذا الإشي كمان المية المالحة، لأنه ما في كهرباء نشغل الموتور، كنا نضطر إنه نحمل المية بالجرادل للطابق الرابع، من الطابق الأول للطابق الرابع. ما في أكل، وإذا وجد بيكون بأسعار غالية كتير وخيالية أغلب الناس ما بتقدر توفرها، لهيك كانوا بيلجأوا للمعلبات واللي أصلاً كمان صارت شحيحة لأنه ما بيدخل مساعدات. مواد التنظيف ما كانت موجودة لفترة كبيرة كتير، واللي كانت السبب في الأمراض الجلدية اللي انتشرت بين الأطفال يعني الناس كلها عموماً. عدم توفر الأدوية، وإذا انوجدت برضو بتكون بأسعار عالية كتير. التعليم متوقف بغزة أكثر من سنة، لا في مدارس ولا في جامعات. المية اللي هي المفروض تكون حلوة للشرب وللطبخ أغلب الوقت مش متوفرة، وإذا توفرت أصلاً بتكون مش نظيفة، كلها أمراض. يعني أنا أهلي انصابوا بالكبد الوبائي وعانوا كتير بسبب المية. حالة التشرد اللي إحنا فيها، ما في بيت، كل فترة بنضطر إنه ننتقل لمكان تاني، ما في استقرار. المواصلات اللي هي تقريباً معدومة، يا كرت حمار أو حصان. الفلوس مشكلة تانية، غير إنه ما في دخل بسبب الحرب، توقف كل شغلنا وكل مصالحنا. ما بنقدر نسحب الفلوس من البنك إلا بعمولة حتكون ثلث المبلغ. المعبر اللي الاحتلال صار يتحكم فيه واللي هو كان وسيلتنا الوحيدة للنجاة، بس بأسعار خيالية، يعني من 5 ل10,000 دولار للشخص الواحد. بس حالياً المعبر طبعاً مغلق. الإنترنت والاتصالات اللي كانت مقطوعة لفترة كبيرة، وإذا قدرنا نوصل له بيكون بصعوبة، لأنه كنا نستخدم الإيسم على السطح، كنا لساعات كبيرة على السطح سواء بالبرد بالشتاء أو بالحر بالصيف، لحتى نقدر نتواصل مع أهلنا اللي برا ونطمنهم على حالنا، أو حتى عشان نعرف أخبارنا.
Even simple tasks take on Herculean proportions in this new version of life for Palestinians.
Now, to discuss Noura's story and what the future of Gaza looks like, I am joined in the studio by Tareq Othaman, a British Palestinian activist. Welcome, Tareq.
Thank you for having me.
Tareq, your initial thoughts as you watched Noura's story?
Absolutely, Deb. It's so heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. It's a scale of pain and suffering that I can never imagine sitting in my, this air-conditioned room, comfortable, safe, happy. It's something that I couldn't even begin to understand. It's so much trauma, so much betrayal, so much pain that it's really difficult to come to terms with. Mm. But it's always, at the same time, there's always a semblance of hope in seeing people who, despite all of that, continue to keep their passions, continue to show the world that they're not just surviving, they're living, they are continuing to do what they can to develop themselves, and in that prove to the occupation that they are continue to exist. It's so inspiring. Mm.
It absolutely is inspiring, but for you in particular, you are a Palestinian British, and for the diaspora, Palestinians all around the world, how difficult or what really has it been like the last 15 months watching this, live stream genocide of your people?
It's very difficult, very difficult. I know many people who have had genuine sort of mental issues or anxiety and disorders as a result of it, and it's very understandable where that comes from. It's very difficult. There is a, lack of sleep, there's a lack of standing, and I think in a way, similar to what she mentioned in the video, it's difficult to sometimes walk about daily life and see regular people going about their regular life as if something isn't happening. And even when we go about regular life things, going to the shops or, working, it's always at the back of our minds, and it's difficult to understand sometimes that there's a lot of people for whom out there this isn't even an afterthought. Sometimes when I'll be coming back from a protest really fired up, really emotional and sort of, this is something, is something that is really at the forefront of my mind. And yet, I step inside the train and, the group of people just talking about the latest celebrity gossip. And it's really hard to try and bring those two together. And I do feel a sense of hatred almost at how many people are able to go about as if something isn't happening this violent, and as if they're not complicit in it. And it's difficult, but at the same time, there's also a lot of pride, as I said, and part of surviving, but not just survive, part of living is being able to go out and say, I'm not forgetting it, but I'm using that to fuel my future. I'm going to continue going to work. I'm going to continue developing myself because I need to, in order to show the world and show the occupation that we won't be forgotten and that we aren't just, an afterthought that you can throw a few crumbs at. And
it's almost like there's a parallel world, yeah? You're living in two different separate worlds.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. It's a shock to me all the time whenever I talk to someone and they have such, small worries, and it's always like, it's difficult to sometimes not say, I'm sorry, but I don't really care about this. It's difficult to hear people talking about celebrity gossip, and I'm like, what allows you to have the mental capacity to care about this right now? But I think there's a point where, of course, that we have to understand that privilege isn't something to be jealous of as much as it is as a privilege that I want to achieve. It's not something I want others to not have. It's something that I want to get to a point. I want to get to a point where I'm worried about celebrity gossip. I want to care about that.
That's a really amazing, Tareq, listening to you say this, because this is exactly what we're getting out of Palestine. And the reason why the world says, the Palestinians make us proud, that they have consciously awakened us. And listening to you, I think, there is that pride, and you must feel it within your people for what they have endured, but for the way you are explaining this to us about how you view the world and how the Palestinians have been able to really change the perspective of a lot of people around the world.
I think the Palestinian issue is a compass for a lot of people. It's a test of empathy, of compassion, of basic humanity. And because of that, a lot of people who have seen that, and it's very easy to see, it's very blatant to see, they've been able to use that to test the world, to test our leaders, to test their friends and family on whether or not they have the even smallest modicum of humanity. And it's difficult when people fail that test. It's difficult when people you respect, people you appreciate fail that test. And it's something that a lot of us see, but it's difficult at the same time. It's even more difficult to live with people or to accept or easily accept people who don't have compassion, don't have basic empathy.
Absolutely, and I think, I feel the same way, that now, you view the world and you judge everything based on whether you have supported Palestine or not, and that is the marker, like a litmus test of, the person you are or the values you hold. Now, just to remind our viewers, you are watching Women of Resistance, where we highlight the plight of women who were subjected to a genocide in Gaza. We are specifically speaking about women in this particular show, Tareq, and that's because the bulk of the suffering and pain, in any war, but in particular in Palestine, has been endured by the children and the women. Do you think women like Noura, because she says, my life will never be the same again, how do you think they'll be able to build their lives again now that, we have a ceasefire?
It won't be the same, but we have to remember that much of Gaza already was a refugee camp. Jabalia and, Shuja'iyya and plenty of other places in Gaza were already refugee camps. They had already been rebuilt by people who were expelled from their homes and people who were suffering, just as the generation today are suffering. And just like how those built a very fruitful society, as we heard, this generation will be able to do the same thing. I have no doubt about that. one thing that has been proven through this genocide is that you can't ignore us, you can't forget us, you can't pretend like we don't exist, and you can't sort of keep us submitted. You can't incapacitate us, and we continue to grow. The universities will be brought back quicker than we realize, and before we know it, I have a complete conviction that Gaza will be a truly beautiful place again, just as it still is. There's still a very, very long way to go before then, and there's still a very, very long way before Gaza is truly free, before the West Bank is free, and before all of Palestine is free from apartheid. But I have no doubt that will happen. And the reason I have no doubt is because the Palestinian people are very, very good at surviving and living, not just surviving, but living, and continuing to protest their existence and to demand their existence.
And we see this, in the glimpses of Noura's talking about, she talks about, continuing her art despite whatever is happening. She's documenting the genocide. Exactly. Tareq, where does this resilience and the faith in God? A lot of people have talked about how the faith we have seen in Allah, has been unbelievable in these difficulties. Where does it come from?
It comes from, that's a very difficult question. It's a very, very difficult question. And I will be able to tell you now, I don't think I have that level of resilience that the people in Gaza have. I think it takes a very, a different type of human being to see what the people of Gaza have seen and to continue drawing art, for example. And the women of Palestine have seen that more than anyone else. They have had their sons martyred and continue to say, that Alhamdulillah, thank be to God. And I think that takes a very different type of human being. But it's also we also have to remember that these people are, even though it's difficult for me to imagine, and it's easier for us to discount it as people who are simply more resilient than us, it doesn't take away from how much pain they're going through and how little they deserve that pain. And as resilient as they are, that doesn't mean that what they've gone through hasn't hurt them as much as it would hurt us.
Of course, and it's the two, things that go together. It's the pain, the difficulties, but at the same time, the strength they portray. About the ceasefire, how do you see the future? Are you hopeful? Do you think this will hold? What happens next?
I am hopeful. As I alluded to earlier, I do think that this moment, with the beginning of the ceasefire, with the exchange of hostages, as nerve-wracking as it has been, and as there have been so many roadblocks to get to this point, and even in this point, so many delays and calculations and propaganda, and it's very easy to get lost in these details. But the truth is, I think that what we've seen is a resounding Israeli failure, and I can't imagine, and I'm saying this as someone who has been proven time and time again to be surprised by Israeli barbarity, but I truly can't imagine Israel returning to war after this. I can't imagine this not going into phase 2 and phase 3, and more of our, friends and family as Palestinians coming out, and more of our brothers and sisters rebuilding their livelihoods in Gaza and in the West Bank. And it's hard to not see that as a resounding success in that sense.
Absolutely, it is. It's definitely a success. And very quickly, just the last question is, the occupation is not over and the suffering is not completely over. How do we keep these stories alive now that people's focus may not be so much on an ongoing genocide? How do we keep stories like Noura's alive?
I think, there's two different ways of looking at a question like that. The first is, how do we keep a story alive in terms of how do we make sure that the people don't forget the suffering that we've faced? And I think Palestinians have always been very, very good at passing down stories through their generations to make sure that we remember who we are and what we face, as we saw through Noura's experience, learning all about her suffering and the conditions around her oppression. But the other way is thinking of how do we keep this in the media?
Absolutely,
how do we keep the people in the West talking about it? How do we keep how do we keep Palestine on the forefront of everyone's mind?
Which is really, what we aim to do, is to continue telling these stories. Thank you so much, Tareq, for being with me today, and thank you for watching. Until next time, we leave you with the sounds of Palestine by the artist Saif. Goodbye.